easiest to hand over to Carolina. Carolina is going to chair the opening for the co-leads, and then in the closing, Carolina and I will share closing comments. But I think easiest would be hand to Carolina.
Perfect. Thanks, Melanie.
Ariane, I just sent you a WhatsApp. Maybe it would be good to send a reminder to all those who registered.
Yeah, I was going to do that right now.
Thanks.
I just want to ask, the breakout room or the roundtable will be recording also, because I know that Zoom not include the breakout room.
Yeah, so you can record your own breakout room. When you get there, you can just press record and it will record the session for you.
Oh, can you show me quickly, because I don't know.
It should be at the bottom of the screen. Can you find it?
No.
So I'm just showing a brief slide here. Can you see my mouse moving? That's where the record button should be.
Yeah.
For your, so you can record onto your computer. Have you managed to find that? Okay.
Adele, I can, when you go out into a breakout room, I can go out with you and like show you where's the button. Okay.
Okay.
And just to confirm, we have English, Spanish, French and Arabic interpretation via this button here, initially marked interpretation. So just send us a message if we can help at all, but you will have interpretation there. And I'll post that in the chat now as well.
If any other facilitators need help recording, let me know. This is Lauren from UNICEF, and I can jump into your breakout room and record on my computer.
Yes, please, Laura.
Okay, Idil, you want me to join your group and press record?
Yeah, you or Sarah.
Okay, Sarah, are you facilitating already? Another group?
Yes, so if there's going to be like a third English group, I'm going to help with that. But if there isn't, I'm going to help with Adele for the Arabic one.
Okay, so how about if you go into the third English group, I'll go ahead and jump in with Idil and record. But if you are already going in with Idil, if there's no English group, then you can go ahead and record.
Yes,
Sounds
sure.
good?
Okay.
Thanks both.
Melanie and
I'm sure.
Mariana, I think we should wait a few more minutes before we start.
Yeah, I think we can wait 2 to 3 more minutes just to allow some more people to join. I'll send a message into the waiting room to tell them.
Yeah, and the reminder as well, please.
The reminder's been sent.
Okay, thanks.
Ariane, you're going to explain about the selection of speakers, yeah?
Yeah, that will be explained at the end of the consultation.
Right.
So as people join, it may be worth mentioning the interpretation. I'm happy to do this if that would help, unless you would prefer to, Ayan.
That's already in my little bit prepared, so I can just mention that they can change their language at the bottom of the screen.
Sure thing, great. Okay, so I'm just showing this welcome slide at the moment, but the minute you start speaking, of course, I'll stop sharing. And then you can take over from there.
Perfect.
If anybody's intending to share any PowerPoint, it's worth testing quickly as well.
I'm so sorry for bothering. I was wondering, like, if there are already these breakout rooms, because I don't see them.
They are prepared. They're not open yet, so I can show you as a test what they would look like.
Mhm.
So all rooms are opened like now. So then at the bottom of your screen, you can choose the room. Daria and all the facilitators, I'll put you straight into your relevant room. So you'll just be straight taken there and the first one. And then everyone else can choose. For the other people on the call, are you able to choose the room? Hopefully.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Perfect. And then I'll send for facilitators, I'll send a 5-minute warning before we're going to close the rooms, so then you can start wrapping up. And then the rooms will close automatically and everyone will just be shifted. So don't get too worried about if something happens. And for English, just to note that we're going to open only English 1. So everyone will be moved to English 1, and then we'll add English 2 alongside. So Omar, you'll be moved straight to English 2. If English 1 becomes too big, then Daria, you'll see some people move out and go to English 2.
Wanted to check. Do we want to check Sam from UNHCR? Just wanted to see if you wanted to check your mic because Sam's going to be speaking.
Sure. Can you hear me well? Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Confirming we can hear you very well, Samuel. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Noah's back. Noah, can we test your sound if possible? Noah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can get you fine. Do you get me? Is it okay?
We're still a bit
Ariane?
we're still a bit breaking up with you. Can you just try a longer sentence if possible?
It can help.
How is it now? Is it more? Is it better?
I think the Wi-Fi is fluctuating, Noah. It may help to keep the camera turned off when you speak. Apologies, but that may help with the bandwidth.
Okay.
So we could try that.
Okay. So how is it now? Is it better?
Could you just count 1 to 5?
Okay. Thank you.
I think it was better with the camera off. Yes, that assigns the available bandwidth to the audio quality then.
So let us try let us try one last more time. How do you hear me? 5 on 5?
That's sounding more stable with the camera off, Noah. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could do that, that would be perfect. Many thanks.
All right.
And it can help to make sure other devices are turned off that may be using the Wi-Fi. So only your device that's connected to Zoom is using the Wi-Fi. That can make a big difference.
Ben, is there a possible way that the French interpreter would be able to join the French breakout room just in case Noah's internet goes down by any chance?
Let me just check this. If you just bear with me a second. So ideally the breakout room would have interpretation set up. I'm not sure if that's possible in Zoom. Let me just check.
Hi, I did check on this a few days ago, and interpretation still isn't available in breakout rooms in Zoom.
Many thanks, Alison. So our French interpreter could join to do consecutive interpretation, if you think that may be realistic. So one person speaks a sentence, then the interpreter would repeat a sentence, but of course it doubles the time.
Yeah, that could be a backup, if possible. But thanks. Otherwise, I think we've got it sorted. Vanya, is your friend able to join?
Yes, she told me that she's able to join now. If you want, I can send her the link to join.
Yeah, send her the link to join and send her the outcome document template, and she can join Noah in the room as well. So just in case Noah's internet goes down, then we have a backup.
Colleagues, I suggest we start in 2 minutes.
I guess now you got.
Is everyone good to go in 1 minute? Perfect.
Please, can you get me just to be sure everything is okay with me?
Confirming, Noah, we can hear you very well with the camera off like this, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Many thanks.
Okay, colleagues, I'm going to open the waiting room and we can start the session.
Irene?
Welcome, everyone. Just giving it 1 minute for everyone to make their way into the room.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. Can you share the breakout room again? Because I changed my device. Because
Idil, we can hear you perfectly.
can you change the breakout room? Because I don't see in my screen.
The breakout rooms will open later on, but we'll put that, don't worry.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think everyone's made it in. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and welcome to the first ever Global Youth Consultation on Ending Child Immigration Detention, part of the UN Network on Migration's GCM Youth Talks. We're so happy that you've taken your time out on a Monday to join us for this special event. I'm Arian. I'm the Alternatives to Detention Specialist at the Migration Youth and Children's Platform, part of the migration constituency of the UN Major Group for Children and Youth. And it's a real pleasure to see you all here today. We're so glad to meet you and each and every one of you, and we're most importantly really excited to hear what you have to say. Before we start, I would like to inform you all that the meeting is being recorded, and that there is simultaneous translation into French, English, Spanish, and Arabic that's accessible at the bottom of the screen. So check the chat for our support Ben, who's putting some information about how to join that translation. Today's consultation has been organized under the UN Network on Migration's Alternatives to Immigration Detention workstream. So without further ado, I will hand over to Carolina, Verena, and Sam to deliver a statement on behalf of the co-leads of the workstream. Carolina, over to you.
Thanks, Ariane, and good afternoon, morning, or evening to everyone, or buenas tardes, bon après-midi, and masa al-kahir. Depending on where you are around the world, we are just delighted to see so many of you here for what we think is a very important event. I'm Carolina Gotardo. I'm one of the co-leads, the executive director of the International Detention Coalition. I'm one of the co-leads of the Alternatives to Detention Working Group at the UN Migration Network, alongside with colleagues from UNICEF and UNHCR that you will be hearing from very soon. And I think one of the areas where we have seen more momentum in terms of moving the agenda of ending detention is ending child immigration detention, and therefore this event is super timely. Also before the peer learning that we are organizing. And I think, as Ariane said, for us, the role of young people in this agenda is essential. We don't want to take time speaking about so much about our work, but more listening to you. We'll start with very short remarks. And after that, we will have most of the time dedicated to listening, really, which we think is far more important. So without further ado, I pass on the floor first to my colleague Verena from UNICEF, and then to Sam from UNHCR, and that will be followed by Hayat, who is a board member of ITC. But we start with Verena Naus from UNICEF that will share some thoughts.
Thank you so much, Carolina, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here today, and I'm very happy that colleagues from NYCP are bringing us together with so many activists, partners, and like-minded people who don't want to accept the status quo of the world today, where still thousands and hundreds and more children and families get detained every single day for the simple reason that they're trying to cross the border, to reunite with family members, or to do what is absolutely in their right, to seek protection or to be with loved ones and be where they need to be. I really just wanted to, situate today's first peer learning with youth and for youth on such an important topic as part of the sort of wider work that is going on and our joint efforts globally with our partners IDC, with our partners UNHCR, and with all of you here today, so that we can think together, what can we do differently to be more successful? And really, first of all, just sort of to thank you all for bringing us here together. Detention, and in particular child immigration detention, is really one of those things that keeps us all up at night in UNICEF. It is a violation of children's rights. It is violating their right to be with family in many cases when they get separated. It is a violation of the commitment in the Convention on the Rights of the Child to always make sure that what governments do is protecting the best interests of every child. It is also a violation of the commitment to not discriminate on the basis of a child's migration status, simply the fact that they come from one country and not another country, or they hold one passport and not another passport. But it is a violation that in many contexts, publics seem to accept. And sometimes we seem to not look enough, and we seem to be accepting it in some ways. And governments sometimes willingly continue to practice, and sometimes by default continue to do because they don't actually have yet alternatives put in place that make it possible for them to do what they need to do, which is to first protect the rights of children and migrants, and secondly, to also, of course, manage their borders and keep their publics comfortable and safe. Now, detention isn't just when it, detention isn't just harmful when it happens in what we would imagine to be a typical detention center, with gridded windows or some remote island holding. That is the image that we tend to have of, detention in a sort of prison-like setting. We can all imagine that when you are detained in a context like this, that this is not just a violation, but extremely harmful. It's traumatizing. It is leaving long-term scars on your physical health, but also very much on your mental health. But in the context of immigration detention, we are seeing more and more facilities or places that from the outside don't necessarily look like a prison or a detention facility. They sometimes have lovely names like reception center, screening center, holding center, or hotspot, or any other sort of creative branding that makes it look like it's not a prison, but effectively it is keeping children and young people and families, depriving them of their liberty and doing very often the exact same long-term harm. Harming those children's mental health, harming those children's long-term development, because many of these scars, they don't heal so easily, but also really harming their parents and very often undermining them in their role as caretakers, trying to protect and do what is best for their children. So I just want us to be very, very clear that when we say immigration detention, it's not the packaging on the outside that matters. It really matters what's happening on the inside the place where children and parents are held alone or sometimes together, and really deep inside in the heart, in the mind, in the well-being of a child and a young person, what it does to them for the long term. At the same time, I want to be optimistic, and I am optimistic with our partners in UNHCR, with IDC, with colleagues and organizations like many of you here represented today. We have been successful in moving the needle more and more and more in presenting, documenting, studying good alternatives to immigration detention that allow states to both manage the borders and project a sense of control that is often so important to them without violating anyone's rights and without separating families in the process, or allowing states to manage returns without having to detain before deporting anyone, a family or a child or a father. There has been progress made politically. We have governments like Thailand, Mexico, Colombia, Germany that have made just recently, last year at the IMRF, new pledges, building on the commitments made in the Global Migration Compact, that all the member states in the world will work towards ending immigration detention by making investments and changing laws and changing policies that actually move us away from any practice of detention, no matter the branding, the color of the wall, the nice sign on the building. There have also been very positive and very, very reassuring examples, even at the height of the COVID pandemic, where governments have stepped away and realized, look, we can actually manage without detaining anyone for migration reasons. And the world didn't stop. Crime didn't increase. Nothing went wrong. And children and families were able to be free while they were waiting for their procedures to be processed, or while they were having an opportunity to maybe slowly start building or rebuilding a life. And yet we have not been successful enough. And this is why I'm so excited to be here today. We need fresh thinking. We need your fresh look at what we have been trying to do, convincing governments, convincing states, ministries of interior, partners, donors, UN agencies, convening us to think about it, sharing good practices, securing commitments in these global processes. So much has been tried, and yet detention for the purposes of migration control or migration management is still happening. And each country that is moving forward, sometimes it feels another country is sliding back. Like recently, we're seeing in the US, even there, a government that is very committed to no longer have to detain children, feeling pressured and feeling that in the public eye, it's going to be hard to stay the course. So this is really, I think, the task for today. We need the equivalent of the Fridays for Future to accelerate on the progress we have made to really, for once and for all, end immigration detention. We need to move forward and put smart pressure and concrete options on the table for governments that they turn around and actually feel that detention should no longer be a default, that they can be bold and brave and win elections, even if under pressure at the borders, without returning to the old practice of simply detaining mothers, fathers, and children. So we really need a reset. We need a refresh. We need to think what else we can do, how we can change the narrative about immigration detention to just delegitimize it, to no longer make it acceptable for a government that wants to be accepted and play in the sort of global world of migration management that is rights-based, right-centered, and able to protect and manage a public's interest. And I'm really looking forward to your fresh ideas, to your suggestions, to your proposals to all of us, what we can do differently, what we can do more, what we should do less, and how we can make sure as we are moving forward on this common journey towards ending immigration detention, that you are really in the driving seat and your experiences and your ideas are guiding what we're doing. With this, I hand back to you, Carolina.
Thanks, Verena, for a very, very strong start and for reminding us of the damages of detention and how we need to be so careful with the use of words and the whitewashing that sometimes governments do, but also thinking like on this positive note in terms of the momentum that is happening and more than anything, the role that young people play in challenging this agenda and in moving it forward and giving us that fresh look that you're calling for and that we definitely would encourage from young people in this kind of new phase. I would now like to pass on the floor to our other colleague in the ATD working group is Samuel Boutrouche from UNHCR, who will be also elaborating a little bit more from the ideas from Verena. And the floor is yours, Sam.
Well, thanks a lot, Carolina, and hi to everyone. Thanks a lot also, Ariane, and to MYCP for having us. I'm not so young anymore, but it's actually a pleasure to be with you. I won't repeat what Verena mentioned. The picture is indeed has to be nuanced regarding detention of asylum seekers and migrants, especially immigration detention of children. I was just reading actually last week yet another judgment delivered by the Strasbourg court against France concerning the detention of a mother and her 3 children, including a baby of 8 months, and where France actually was condemned once again for inhuman treatment and also, of course, a violation of the right to liberty. I think it's very interesting also building on what Verena was saying, because of course, to convince governments and partners, we need to counter many of the arguments in favor of detention. And what you often hear is that in a case like this, that's what actually France argued in this litigation in Strasbourg, that the placement in immigration detention was in the best interest of the children not to be separated from their mother. Well, this is actually something many other states are arguing to justify the detention. Well, first of all, in this case, actually, it's very interesting because the detention was only for a few days. And back in 2021, France was also condemned for a 9-day detention of a mother and her 2 kids. So it's very, very difficult to imagine in which cases detention, even for a few days, could be in their best interest. So maybe as a youth, you can maybe also remind governments of the fact that this cannot be an argument, neither morally nor legally, as the Strasbourg court just demonstrated again against France a few days ago. Now, turning to today's event, for us, it matters a lot, and we are actually very happy to connect this event with the peer learning, which will take place on the 24th of May, organized by the Working Group 2 of the Network on Alternative to Immigration Detention, because you have a chance, actually, with the recommendations you will be agreeing upon today to influence these governments we just mentioned who will take part in this event later this month. Just to remind you that this is on the 24th of May, this is the 4th peer learning that our group is organizing. It will gather, hopefully, governments from around the world, those with actually promising practice and some with less promising practices on the topic. You will have 3 sessions during this event. One will be on actually drawing the lessons from the previous peer learnings. We've seen actually in some cases that promoting one practice by a state actually help others taking the step forward and implementing it for themselves. As Verena mentioned, without anything wrong happening when it comes to ATDs. The second session will be about the local action. I think this is very important too. The local authorities don't care about the status. They are actually competent to respond to the needs and provide access to services. And that's where I think we've seen very, very promising practices as well in some local areas. And the call to local action launched by municipalities at the last IMRF is also quite telling about what the local authorities can do. And the third session will be about the next steps. That's, of course, an event that will be very important to convey the recommendations you will discuss today, but there will be also an opportunity for 3 young speakers to take the floor during this peer learning, the 24th of May, during the introduction and during session 2 and 3, as I mentioned. So we really look forward to that. Just to flag 2 other very important opportunities where the engagement of the youth on this topic will be critical. One is the Global Refugee Forum at the end of this year. This will be an opportunity to actually assess the implementation of pledges under the Global Compact for Refugees in favor of alternative to detention, but also to promote new pledges. Don't forget that on ATDs, you have 2 compacts speaking almost exactly the same language, Objective 13 of the GCM and paragraph 60 of the GCR. So use both in your advocacy and your recommendations. And there are plenty of opportunities in the lead up to the GRF to also ensure the engagement of youth. And the next one later, actually next year, will be the regional reviews of the GCM, of the other compact, the one on migration. Here again, the state of implementation of Objective 13 and all its commitments on ATDs will be reviewed at the regional level. So I think will be very, very important to actually feed into this process as well. Thank you so much, and over to you, Carolina.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you for reminding us very strongly that detention is never in the best interest of the child, and sharing with us the upcoming peer learning on the 24th of May and the opportunities there, and also how the compacts are instruments for advocacy, and there are different events happening both with regards to the GCM and with regards to the GCR that we hope that many of you could be engaged in with pushing this agenda forward. I just want to now pass the first to thank NYCP again for doing this. We are very, very happy to have this opportunity to do this together, and look forward to hear from you, and then to pass the floor back to Ariane that will explain the next steps of today before going to Hyatt.
Thank you, Carolina, Verena, and Sam for those remarks and strong calls to action. MyCP is a youth-led and run volunteer organization to facilitate the participation at the UN, youth participation at the UN and beyond. That's why this event, made possible thanks to UNICEF, is about you. This consultation serves the purpose of getting young people voices in spaces that you are all too often excluded from. You and all of us on this call as young people have the ability to make a meaningful impact on states and policies and practices to end child immigration detention. And selected youth representatives of you here today will be able to bring a united youth voice to the government on May 24th, as Sam was mentioning. Our focus today is on getting youth perspectives on the current working knowledge, challenges, and solutions on ending child immigration detention. What you contribute here today will directly contribute to the global peer learning exchange between member states, as well as the Global Compact on Migration regional reviews and the next IMRF and Global Refugee Forum. Today, this event is run and led by young people. We'll be asking you 4 questions around ending child immigration detention in language-based roundtable discussions to get your opinions, views, and ideas to contribute to a global youth report to form the basis of our advocacy on the topic in the future. This is a sensitive topic, so we want to assure you that what you said here today truly does have an impact, and nothing you say here today will be attributed directly to you, so please feel free to speak freely and without concern. We'll then come together to discuss the fruits of your roundtable discussions and close with some short remarks by UNICEF, IDC, and myself. We know some of you have differing levels of knowledge on the issue of ending child immigration detention. On this call, there are some who have lived experience of detention or as a migrant or refugee themselves. And some of you here are advocates and activists working in this space. One person who is both is our final speaker for this opening ceremony, Haya Akbari, member of the IDC board and advocate for the rights of migrants and refugees around the world. Haya, can I introduce you and welcome you to the floor?
Thanks, Arian. Hi, everyone. Good morning, evening, where you are tuning to this session. As mentioned by Arian, my name is Hayat Akbari. I am a member of the International Coalition, Detention Coalition board member. And thanks, Samuel, for reminding us all about Objective 13 of the Global Compact on Migration, which is use of immigration as a last resort and work towards alternatives. Because we all know detention of, something that mentioned by Verena as well, detention harms children regardless of their condition in which they're held, and what that could be in different names. And these damages can occur even if the detention is relatively short during duration and in a well-appointed facilities. So here I want to talk about the role of civil society and particularly focusing on a case study of Australia. As you all might know, Australia had this had this policy of putting refugees in Australia, arriving in Australia by boat and putting them in Nauru. Some might be asking, where's Nauru? And Nauru is just located 4,000 kilometers southeast of Sydney, Australia, where a large number of young children were put in detention for a long time. And how it came to an end was through the work of civil societies in Australia, and that's particularly Doctors for Refugees, who worked day and night to bring young people out of detention. Because again, just the concept of, or just that the point around detention, of detention having an impact on short-term and long-term, and more importantly, talking from perspective of someone who were put in detention or who were detained who were detained for 1 year, and I can tell you from experience how destructive and also how it can put a negative on people's mental health and also long-term long-term impact on their mental and psychological status. I also want to talk about taking this opportunity, and thank Samuel and everyone else talking about the engage or bringing young people on the table. And I think that's very important to be often assume that we know the answers. We assume that, but I think it's the opposite. It's the young people, it's the people who are affected by the issue. They have the answer and they know the solution for it. So it's important to see, and also it's very encouraging. It's very hopeful to see young people being on the table and talking for themselves. And it's and just to say that we still a long way to go. I mean, we have heard many examples. We have examples of Mexico, Thailand, who have put not putting young people in detention. But I think there's many parts of the world people are still, particularly children, is still being detained with sometimes with family, without family. And I just want to remind again that putting the detention doesn't have just impact in short term, but long term as well. And I think we all here, people in the call, and I particularly want to encourage young people in the call to get the gut to believe yourself and voice the concerns, and that's to talking about advocating about governments. I mean, in your respective country or the region you're living, to advocate and talk with the governments to end child detention, and all of us has a role to play in this. So with that note, I am still hopeful of the improvement has made to end child detention, but also at the same time, I believe there's a long way to go, and all of us, we have a role to play in this to bring the detention as a last resort and using as an alternative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hayat, for sharing about your work and your experience with us today. What you said will really help us with the next part and the most important part of today's consultation, hearing from you, the participants and the young people. In these roundtable discussions in Arabic, French and Spanish and English, we want to hear your ideas, answers, thoughts to 4 very important questions around your knowledge and experience in child immigration detention, its impact on young people and communities, and your policy solutions and advocacy ideas for both governments and youth. As I said earlier, everything you say will be anonymized unless you specifically asked otherwise. Led by our incredible facilitators who are migrants and advocates themselves, Daria, Noah, Vanya, Idil, Sarah, and Omar, this roundtable is a chance to discuss and come together and get your points across. No comment is unwanted, so please do not be afraid to participate, and we encourage you to do so as much as possible. Having said that, please do be respectful, kind, and inclusive of one another, allowing for everyone in the roundtables to give their views, and keep your answers as brief as possible as we are short on time. In the roundtables, each one will select a single person to act as a rapporteur, a spokesperson for the group who will select who will speak on behalf of the roundtable at the plenary discussion. The rapporteur has the responsibility to take notes on the answers to the questions, summarize key ideas, and speak for up to 3 minutes in about an hour's time. Finally, some of the organizers may be coming in and out of the breakout room, so please do not be disturbed or alarmed by this. The breakout rooms are about to open, so please join in the language you would like to converse in. Please note that if a room gets too big, some of you may be reorganized and moved to a breakout room of the same language. And those confident in speaking in Arabic, French, and Spanish, please do join in those rooms rather than the English one, if you can. You'll be taken out of the rooms automatically and given a notice when the meeting is about to close. Again, don't be shocked about this. And if you get removed from the meeting for any reason, please join using the same link. And for any tech issues, please let the facilitator or someone know. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Bonjour Noah.
Bonjour.
C'est Florence. Alors, on n'a pas beaucoup de clients pour le français, j'ai l'impression.
Florence. Bonjour. Oui, j'ai aussi l'impression, je ne sais pas, peut-être on va patienter 5 minutes de
Oui.
plus.
Oui. Ça y est, nous avons Cyrine avec nous.
Voilà, donc.
Je vais mettre ma caméra aussi. Bonjour Cyrine.
Quand j'ai vu que cette chambre, il y en a juste deux, j'ai rejoint cette chambre, mais je pouvais aussi rejoindre la chambre Arab Speaking, mais il y avait 8, donc je me suis dit, je vais rejoindre celle-ci.
Ok. Après, on va voir peut-être parce que si on se rend compte qu'il n'y a pas beaucoup de francophones, ça pourrait être plus intéressant pour vous peut-être de rejoindre 2 autres rooms.
D'accord.
On attend encore un petit peu.
D'accord.
Oui, je pense que là, nous sommes déjà
Bon.
3. Donc,
4. Enfin, oui.
okay.
Bonjour Sincère.
Bonjour.
Sincère, et juste pour savoir si vous parlez aussi une autre langue.
Juste le français et l'anglais.
Très bien.
C'est vrai que j'ai l'allemand et le portugais en C, mais je ne parle
Ouais.
pas encore vraiment ça. Merci.
Ce que l'on se dit, c'est que pour s'assurer d'avoir une discussion plus intéressante et plus riche aussi, avec plus d'échanges, si dans quelques minutes on voit qu'il n'y a pas que nous sommes toujours 4 dans cette pièce, room, peut-être qu'il vaudrait mieux pour vous, ça serait peut-être mieux pour vous de rejoindre une autre breakout room en anglais. Mais on attend encore quelques minutes.
Florent, je pense que on va rejoindre le groupe.
Oui,
English
rejoignez.
speaking.
Ok, parfait.
D'accord,
Rejoignez.
allons-y alors.
Chat box, everyone. Did you record, Mali? Nani?
It wasn't me, but somebody is recording.
Great. Thank you for that person's recording. I hope if everything is clear, if you didn't hear me quite, so that I can also repeat what I said. Is everything clear? Thumbs up. Thank you. But before we start, I want from someone to volunteer if he want like to be or she want to be a reporter. So don't shy, just say I am. Okay, Shirin Wanti, right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Great. Then you're gonna introduce like everything that you take notes to the plenary, okay?
Sure.
Thank you. So should we start? Okay. So the first question we have is, I'm gonna also text on the chat box also that everyone can see it. But the first question is, what do you know about child immigration detention, and are there any experience you would like to share? So is it clear, the question? Also, let me text it here. Go ahead, guys. So feel free to express everything that you would like to talk. And so this is the first question. What do you know about child immigration detention, and are there any experience you would like to share? So should I choose, or should I, or someone like will volunteer for that?
Ayesha has their hand up.
Yeah. I can see, yeah. Ayesha, then Chirimwanti, and then Kat. Go ahead, Chirim.
Hello. Okay. Hello, everyone, and good evening from Thailand.
Good evening.
So my name is Aisha, and I'm originally from Pakistan, but I'm a refugee here in Thailand, and I'm also a student. Thailand is not as everyone knows, Thailand is not a signatory country of a UN Geneva Convention, so there's a very limited rights for the refugees here. But I'm the one of the luckiest refugee in Thailand who started a journey for the education here, and I finished my 2 masters here. Right now, I'm doing my second master's in human rights and democratization. And I'm working very closely with my own refugee community I belong to a Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and we migrated from Pakistan here because we declared a non-Muslim in Constitution of Pakistan. So the problem is, as he in the plenary session, he was saying like Thailand and Australia, they have a very less numbers, I think, for the detainees, especially in child. And yes, that's right. There is a very lower number in Thailand for the children who is in the now they just changed like 3 years ago. Now they are not going into the detention center, but they have the women and children center. This is a name in Thailand, but there's nothing changed. I didn't saw any change and difference in the detention center and that new place. It's same as a traumatized place as detention center. And when they said like there is a very lower number, they are lower, but I think every child is matter, even it's one child in a detention center on the women and children center. And experience being a refugee and very close working with the community, it's a very painful for me whenever, like even now, right now, we have 2 children of our community in a detention center they got arrested with their mother on 3rd of April, and still they are in the detention center. And they're very one is 3 years old and one is 5 years old. And when I saw them first in a police station, their mother shared a picture with me, and they were like sleeping on a floor. They spent 2 nights in a police station. They were watching their mothers in a handcuff, and they're not criminals, their mothers, but they are just refugees. And the way they were treated, what kind of thinking the child think in the future, and even right now they are spending. So the thing is, I know it's in some countries there is a very difficult to dealing with the local governments. It's very difficult to talk with them on these issues, and sometimes there's a lot of delays in a talk, especially when the country is, they don't want to hear on our refugee rights. But the problem is what I am faced from last, because I'm here as a refugee like almost 10 years now. And I work with my community in a detention center almost 6 years. I was like continuously visiting by myself as a volunteer for the community. And what I realized during that work, what organizations can do, but why they are very lazy in this work. Lazy mean there is a bail process in the country, especially in Thailand. You can, like some organization, they can bail out the women and children. There is one also government agency who's working, but the process is very slow. For example, the two children I'm talking about, they got arrested on the 3rd of April, and still the bail is under process. And I'm the one like who is like coordinating with that NGO, and also with the father who is outside because he was not got arrested that day. But the process is very slow. And the second problem is there is no any organization who provide like a food in these spaces. No one can visit from the family side, those mother and children center. And I was requesting again and again, the father want to talk with the children, but they said, okay, before they had some law to talk with the family or family outside, but now they don't. So we are unable to talk with the women and those two children from last 1.5 months. We don't know how they are, what they are feeling. Are they okay? Are they sick? And this year is very hot in Thailand. The weather is very hot here, and like it's very difficult even outside. So how the children are inside. I'm writing a thesis on a refugee education. So my advisor just told me like I'm not allowed to take interviews from the children, from the refugee children, because there is like ethics. You cannot interview them. So I was thinking, as a refugee, I was thinking that time, like what our children are facing. It's like why we are not able to ask questions, because what they feel and what they experience is very painful. And I'm always I really want to show you the picture of these two kids when they spend the night these are the two kids. This is in a police station. They spend a night in a police station, and this is their like mother in a handcuff, standing with the girl.
Okay.
So from 1.5 months, I'm thinking what those two children are thinking about, why we are here, what our mother has done, why is our father outside. I know the bail process is slow, but the talk with the government, what about the basic needs? Who will provide them? We went with the food many times, but they don't allow, because these shelters, they only allow the organizations. But there's no any organization who went with the food. And at least the basic needs are important, and also the medicine is important inside if someone is got sick. I think I'm taking much time because I have a lot of things to talk as my like
No
personal
worries.
experience, because it's
Thank
very
you, Ayushka.
painful. But I
Thank you
hope
for
you
sharing
understand.
all this, and this is great what you said about Thailand and bringing the refugee. So I'm gonna give the chance to Shirin Wanti. So please go ahead, and after to Katurnada.
Thank you so much, Omar, for that. And thank you so much, Aisha, for setting the stage for this very important discussion that we are having today. So a very quick introduction about myself. I am an immigrant. I'm originally from India, but right now I'm living in Portugal and I am conducting research. I come from a very academic background, but I'm also into activism for child rights and human rights. And I'm currently working as the policy research and advocacy head in a youth-led organization called Politics for Her. I think it's very important to set the stage before we go on to talk further about the other questions that we have. And I think it's very important to remind ourselves again about what child immigration detention is. The panelists and the experts in the beginning of the talk gave a really, really brilliant overview of that. But I think we should again have a look at it and just like, create the momentum for the talk. So my working knowledge about child immigration detention spans across both my own country, which is India, and also Portugal, where I'm currently based. And these two countries have very different policy approaches when they, in the way they deal with child immigration detention, right? So to reiterate in very simple words, and I'm not sure about the working knowledge of the other panelists here that we have today. So for them as well, a child immigration detention is a very harmful migration management tool, and it needs to be completely prohibited. A lot of discussions have been going on in advocacy groups, international organizations about the harmful effects it has, but we still have a long way to go. And I think the most important thing is decriminalizing the very fact that you are detaining a child only because of their or their parents' migration status. And this is a clear violation of child rights. It not only goes against international laws, but it also violates the Convention on the Rights of the Child in many ways. Yet, even at this moment, while we are doing this GCM talk, thousands of children in some part of the world, at least across 80 countries, is getting detained. Thousands of children on the move are detained every single day, and this needs to stop. I myself not have the experience of this detention, or I do not really know someone who has experienced this in person in my family, but I do have a lot of my colleagues and peers who have gone through this, and I've heard really, really sad, brutal stories, and it's really sad how this scars them for life. I have some, when I was working in France for some project, I was in contact with some of my peers who were from Afghanistan and Pakistan, and they told me that they were kept in so-called hotspots, so-called places called reception centers, like child-friendly environment, but it was not really what it looks like, how the policy whitewashes everything. So that really needs to change. Those peers of mine, they are scarred for life, and that really, really needs to change. I would just quickly like to say that just a few words about how child immigration detention is perceived in India, and also where I'm currently based at, Portugal. So India does not really have a very concrete policy when it comes to refugee and immigration, which in itself is a big, big problem, because India not only is a very, as we all know, a prime a prime source of immigrants all across the world, but is also the source of several immigrants who are, again, criminalized. They are called irregular immigrants, illegal immigrants, and whatnot. So there is this fetishism of categorizing people, and then the policies are largely based on that. But India has detention center. Its largest detention center actually started operation this year. Before that, the operation of detaining children and other irregular immigrants were operating out of district and central jails. But India's largest detention center opened its door today, and even today they are detaining children, which is so wrong. And the same is happening in Portugal. They do have temporary installation centers. Again, they call them installation centers. And they also have detention facilities at the border of 3 airports at Lisbon, Faro, and Porto. And there also children are detained. The policy says that they should be given access to education inside those centers. They should have access to recreation. They should have access to whatnot, right? So that they don't lose their childhood. But isn't this hypocritical? You put a child inside a center, whitewash it, call it something like a good reception center, and then you try to give them childhood which you have snatched away from them. And this is really, really derogating.
Thank you, Srinwati. I'm gonna this is really huge topic to discuss, but we don't have much time, but I wish that I could really discuss this with you and all of you. Really, thank you very much. I'm gonna say Katranet. Sorry if I said your name correctly.
Hi, hello everyone. I am Katerneda from Morocco. Specifically I am from the north of Morocco, and I am a feminist activist and human rights activist at Politics for Her. So, as you know, I am from Morocco, and in particular, the north of Morocco is very known by the immigration because we have the borders between Morocco and Spain, Ceuta, the borders of Ceuta. So we have many Moroccan children who face many obstacles, many crimes, detention in Spain and at the borders. And for me, I was volunteering at Ceuta in an organization about immigration, and I really saw how the police treats children, how they treat the youth. So I think the only solution is the power for organizations. And unfortunately, in Ceuta or in Spain or even in Morocco, we don't have a powerful organizations. I think all the organizations about immigration in Spain or Morocco, they are just based on donors, etc. So I was working on projects about immigration in Centro Cultural Español here in Morocco, and we worked on children immigration issues in Spain, especially the Moroccans ones. So they really face many problems, but these Moroccan children, we can say that they might be forced for this immigration, even from Morocco or from their parents, because as you know, Morocco is very it's not a powerful country in terms of economy. We have crisis, we have corruption, we have many things. And I think this is the reason why children are forced to immigrate.
Thank you, Katra, for this information. What happened in Morocco and between Spain and Tanja, exactly right. Did you say Tanja?
No, Ceuta. That
Ceuta,
one.
yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
The north of Morocco, yeah.
Oh, okay. The part they were speaking Spanish, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I catch up with you, Frederick, then Merv. Sorry, Merv, but Frederick. Go ahead, Frederick. Frederick, please check your microphone first. If you want, close the video because the internet will be so loady because when you turn the video with the mic also. Yeah. Speak now.
Right. Hi, everyone. Frederick Zulu from Zambia.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I'm from Zambia, Central Province of Zambia, in a youth for sexual activity as well as child protection and initiative. Zambia.
Dear Frederick, please, if you can go to somewhere else because the internet, I guess, is having problem connection. So please make sure for you connecting. We can't hear you quietly, so.
Me?
Am I the only one who can't hear him, or you guys also? Because it's not
Can also
connecting.
get him. It's kind of breaking.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
We cannot hear him. It's kind of breaking.
Yeah, we will back to you, Frederick, please, and I'm gonna give the word to Merv.
Hi, thank you. Thanks so much for giving us this opportunity, and thanks so much to all who are sharing their experiences and observations.
I do not have a refugee or immigrant background. I'm living in Turkey. I'm a lawyer, and I am working at Refugee Rights Turkey, which is an independent NGO providing free legal support to refugees and irregular migrants in Turkey. And I practiced law here for 1.5 years. I was acting as a lawyer, and I had many opportunities to conduct regular visits to removal centers and the other de facto detention facilities. And during my visits, of course, I also met with children immigrant detainees. So maybe I can share my observations. I thought I can share my observations on the implementation of law and the legislation itself. First of all, there is no absolute prohibition of immigration detention of children in Turkey in the legislation. There is no mentioning of last resort approach. There is no mentioning of complete prohibition, complete eradication, but only with a new legislative piece, we have this necessity requirement. And there is one law, there is one regulation, which was issued in September last year. And according to it, alternatives to detention should be the primary focus, especially for some vulnerable groups. And of course, children either accompanied or unaccompanied are among these vulnerable groups. But the practice is not quite promising. Legislation is kind of good on paper, but practice is still falling short. So I can say that I met many children, like unaccompanied minors under detention, and especially from Afghanistan, especially since the Taliban takeover in 2021. And I can also say that Afghan minors are under a bigger threat of detention, immigration detention, because now currently there is a kind of a bias in Turkish immigration officers. Even if an Afghan minor has a passport or tezkira, they don't. The officials are not sometimes, in some cases, are not regarding these documents as valid, as credible, and so even if they have like papers, they take sometimes in some cases they take them into detention. And also I can say that the detention conditions for children traveling with their family members are kind of better, because in most of the removal centers in Turkey, families are placed at different sections of the removal centers, which are designated in a way to accommodate families. So there, in some removal centers, like there are toys, like playgrounds, and it's kind of good, of course, for a child. But when it comes to unaccompanied minors, Turkish authorities say we never detain an unaccompanied minor. If we detain someone, then this means adult. But what is problematic is that the identification of unaccompanied minors is a huge problem. They don't identify unaccompanied minors as minors. They just sometimes arbitrarily associate them with unrelated adults. And sometimes they just write their ages like 20, 19, even if the child claims otherwise. So this is the case. They say we never detain unaccompanied minors, but I met many. So I just wanted to share my observations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Marv. Thank you very much for your information. Also, this is great thing. But we don't have much time really, but can you imagine this was only the first question, guys? So I'm gonna jump to the second question. So the second question is, what are the consequences of child immigration detention on children and youth, including on their communities, such regional, national, or local? So I'm gonna start with Andrew, because I don't know who was first, Andrew or Elliot, but please, can you, Andrew, start? Andrew Mendy. I'm gonna also put the question here that can be more clear. Here is the question. Yeah, Shriwanti.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't raise my hand because I would like to share my answer, but
Yeah, I know everyone is starting really for the questions, but please let's give us to the others sometimes also to speak. So thank you, Shriwanti.
Omar.
Yeah,
Omar.
yeah.
Can you type the question on the chat
Yeah,
box?
here is the question. What are the consequences of the child immigration detention on children and youth, including on their communities? So yeah. Yeah, I did, Manu. Okay, Elliot, go ahead. We will be back to Andrew also. Are you with us, Elliot?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Okay.
Wait. Yes, Andrew.
No, Omar, let him go ahead. I'll come after he speaks. All right.
Yeah, okay, dear. Go ahead, Elliot. Please introduce yourself also. And we don't have that much time. Let it to be so short, please.
Yeah, okay, great. So my name's Elliot. I'm actually from the UK. So I'm not an immigrant myself, but I kind of work within advocacy for refugees. So like it's obviously an important topic because detention centres present in the UK where I live and also kind of other countries where we're looking like the US. I think the main consequence that we obviously have is like the mental health of the child because you are being driven away from your parents. That in itself is a very traumatic experience. Likewise, you know, lots of the reports we get from these places that these children are underfed, undernourished. That has physical impacts, but also kind of psychological impacts on them in the future. So I think generally we can see both physical and mental negative consequences for these children, but also like on their communities as a whole, right? We've seen how like mothers, how fathers feel when their children are taken away from them or they can't access them. That in itself is kind of bad for their own health and the wider community, but also it may create a sense of hostility between these communities and the government who's involved in taking their children away, which I think is like probably kind of from a government's perspective, but like to sort of preempt the third question that's coming up, like that's their concern that they need to worry about. And hopefully that should incentivize them to kind of improve measures towards these children. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on this.
That's great, Delio. Thank you.
Hello.
Andrew? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Thank you, Omar. So, okay, so my observations about the question is, this is a very important issue, especially in these contemporary times, child detention, which is very harmful to the child. One, it denies them access to education, also denies them access to healthcare centers, because when a child is detained, it also affects his psychological thinking and everything. So, and two, the child also is vulnerable to exploitation and all of those. So there are legal frameworks that guide some of these things. And when a child immigrates to another country, it's part of the responsibility of that state to protect the child, because if they go against it, then they're going against international law, ensuring that they must ensure that the child has access to education, and also the child is not vulnerable to exploitation, because once they are detained, who knows, probably even those people who detain them could kind of inflict certain unwanted punishment on the child, and this also could hinder the progress of the child and all of those. So one of the things, just to pinpoint it, is one, exploitation denies them access to education because they have the right to gain an education, even though they are immigrants in a particular country, host country. They should have access to education. They should have access to healthcare centers. So these are some of the things that governments must ensure that child immigrants are provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. So we're gonna move to the question 3 because time is limit, time is gold, but I'm gonna start also with Maher Adam because he raised his hand and we didn't hear his voice, so sorry guys. So the third question is about governments are concerned about managing migration in that context. How can government in your country or region be persuaded in away from using child immigration detention? I'm also copying the question in the chat box that everyone can also see it. Here is it. So yeah, the question is about the government. And Adam, if you hear me, please. Adam? Okay, we're gonna move to Shirin. No, wait. Okay, Shriwanti, because you. Okay.
Sure. Yep. I think, yeah, definitely. Like, even if I talk about.
Shriwanti, can you be close to the mic because
Oh,
you're using the mic of the laptop? So yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry about that. So
Okay.
yeah, it's true. I mean, I would like to answer this from the perspective of the country where I am living right now, which is Portugal, and not India. Of course, the Portuguese government is very much concerned about concerning migration, but we also have to keep in mind that Portugal is one of those European countries which actually opened its doors to asylum seekers and refugees in the context of the 2015 Mediterranean or European crisis, as it is famous as. But when it comes to, as I already mentioned in the first question, that the child immigration detention policies in Portugal is kind of a bit like, you know, again, I think it's whitewashed, but they're like a bit better compared to other European countries. And they do think about how to indulge children in cognitive development, right? But the question is, how can we persuade the governments, right? So as I told, I work for a youth-led organization, right? And we all are youth. So I really believe in people power and the power of youth. So I think what lacks today, we all know, like, for example, people who work in human rights, people who are in this field, they are aware about child immigration detention. But if you go out and you ask a normal citizen, some people don't even know about it. Some people don't even care about it. So I think there needs to be more awareness, you know, and when there is awareness about one thing, when everybody is fighting for one cause, it's very easy to persuade policymakers, lawmakers, you know, and when there is, like, you know, a very consolidated voice from people, be it in terms of, and for example, today, hashtag activism, online activism, digital resistance, we can make use of these things, right? And help persuade our government. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's lovely to discuss with you this really. And you mentioned a lot of things. Really, one of the importance is really that we want to aware the people to know more about this topic also. I'm gonna really pick someone that didn't like his hand and wait. Justin Mutale. Sorry if I said your name, but if you are hearing us, please can you participate? Everyone really feel to participate and say anything. Go ahead. Maher. Go ahead, Maher.
Hi everyone.
Maher, we
can
cannot
you hear me?
hear you because your connection is cutting. Maher? Maher, your connect is really is cutting. So can you try now to speak? So we're gonna go to the part of question 4 that we have only 10 minutes, I guess. So the question 4 is what can be done by children and youth to bring a focus onto this issue globally and regionally? So this is really a good question. And wait, I sent to Maria. Here is it. What can be done by children and youth to bring a focus onto this issue really? Because globally and regionally. So bless more. Did I say your name correctly? You are mute or you are not mute, but we can't hear you. Yeah, try to use without the headphone. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I think what young people and youth can do
they can also volunteer. So instead of waiting for the government and organizations to act, young people can also volunteer. It could be teaching English, it could be maybe helping them with their schoolwork so that they do not fall behind, or they could just interact with the kids. Because I'm a volunteer and I work with kids, and most of the times when we visit them, they're so happy to see us. So maybe that's just going to them could also help them maybe forget about what they are facing. It would help them with their mental health. So you could also volunteer maybe by adopting a brother or sister, someone you can just be visiting in those detention centers. And also, what has been mentioned before, you can also spread the word, because I've realized a lot of people do not know anything about child detention. So if we speak out, then we can have collective action. And we have seen what has been happening with climate change. A lot of people have been working together. A lot of youth has been making noise on social media. And now there are many conferences where young people are speaking about climate change. So if we do the same thing, it will also help spread the word about child detention and its dangers. And also the young people, they're very good at advocacy. So they could also demand transparency and accountability from the governments, and also putting the people with experienced detention and also child immigrants to be in the forefront. When speaking out, we could give them a floor to share their experiences. And when we are making decisions, maybe the governments can also consult them. Thank you.
Thank you, Prosmo. You really you highlighted on a big issue is happening on climate change. That's correctly. And also it's like cross-cutting because it's related to everything, gender dimension and child marriage, everything. So now I'm gonna give everyone really 1 minute because we don't have that much time. So I'm gonna start with Aisha and then Merv, please, 1 minute, then Katrinada, okay? And everyone is want to participate, please tell me, but we don't have that much time. Aisha? Yeah.
Okay, so 1 minute for the final comment, right?
Yeah. Just wait. Justin, did you say something? Yes, dear.
Yes, I wanted to contribute something like on what the youths or the children can do. Oh, by the way, I'm just from Zambia, Central Province. Yes. So in most cases, a lot of issues, if we have issues most of the times, is as a youths, it's very important that youths, just like the previous speaker said, they get involved in things. Because what would only draw closer or the voice to be heard is by the actual people who are living in it. And in most cases, children or young people are the most culprits, because when the big men sits in bigger positions, they assume everything is okay, assuming like the life they pass through is the life they are going through. So as a youth, being energetic and so enthusiastic, so you need just to be available and volunteer, involve yourself in a lot of activities until your voice is heard out. Because shouting out to not just shooting blank bullets, but being positive and involving yourself as a youth, you'll be noticed. And gladly enough, we are in the 21st century where we have a lot of media, social media, where you can air out things easily. Yes, I submit.
This is great. As we have, because they are at 8 minutes, I'm gonna jump to question 2, but please, if you have something to say it, go ahead in the chat also. We only have 8 minutes, but this is gonna be the last question for everyone. So the question is, what can be done by government to incorporate children and youth perspective on this issue? So I said who? Aisha, then Mer, the great lawyer. Also Shirin Wanti, but let's listen to Fredrik first before. Fredrik is, if you really in internet is good, go ahead. Frederick? I guess he gone. Go ahead, Aisha. Aisha, you hear me?
Yes. For
Yeah, for this question, if you don't have any
I have some
thought,
like just for the previous question, like the how can the youth? I think we can bring the awareness, especially at the university levels. We can use the students in that country that they can bring some even some organizations. They can bring some projects with the university level and bring awareness in the local people. And the second thing is when someone like youth and children, they came out from the detention centers, so there is no one to is there, especially this is a like ground reality of the country where I'm living now. No one is there to visit those people, like what now they are thinking after. So they went in a more depression and a stressful situation, like they every time thinking of that time while they were in the detention center and how so we need to make a connection with them and how we can bring them into the normal life. How can we make them busy in something else, especially for the youth or the children, to make them busy in some education activities and also the art activities to bring out them from the depression. So this is a much needed even after the detention center too, because no one really care what the children are doing after that and how they're living in their, the refugee life is very hard. So with this experience coming out from the detention center, and then there's no one they can talk and share their issues, and they don't have anything to do. So it's very more painful situation, and it could end it with a very like, depressed life.
thank you, Aisha. Let's go move to Qatar because she is so excited, guys.
Hello, everyone again. So for me, we can say the only solutions are raise awareness. Secondly, scholar orientation, because it is totally important, especially here in Morocco, because our educational system lacks scholar orientation. And we can say we can also rely on creating strong, powerful organizations and volunteering. Yes, that can defend children and youth rights.
Yes, thank you, Qatar. Merv?
I was not really volunteer for this question. Maybe you can just give the
no,
floor to more volunteer people.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's okay, because I'm gonna choose, but there is people that never ever like they even like open the mic. So let's see. My head is not open.
Frederick is raising.
Frederick,
is raising his hand.
Frederick? Oh. Frederick?
Able to get me now? Are you getting me? Oh.
Frederick, I swear I want to hear you really. But
Hello, Mark. Can I just chime in?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, just to
Frederick?
respond to the question that you dropped in the chat box.
Yeah,
what can be done by the governments to incorporate children and youth perspectives on the issue?
Okay.
So like I said, I think this is a very important issue. Child detention, nobody should think about it. Nobody should do it. No state, no government should do it because they are the duty bearers, and they must ensure that people are protected despite their immigration status and anything. So what can be done by government is to ensure, because there are international conventions, there are legal frameworks that guide this. They can just work on probably to strengthen more of their commitments and towards ensuring that children are protected and all of those. So this should not be done by any government. They must ensure that children's rights are protected, that no child is detained, because of whatever status, because they must enjoy the rights that are enshrined in so many international legal frameworks. So I think what can be done by government is to ensure that they kind of draft policies, national policies that will kind of frown against these issues, and also not that ones only, but also to strengthen their commitments in the legal frameworks that they are parties to. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just gonna say names. So if they want really to participate, really feel free. I'm gonna start from above. Okay, Charlotte Rowland, if you are here, please, if you want to anything to say or intervention that you have for the last question. Manumuk, I am the library. Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Noah, Stephanie, I'm gonna call everyone his name really. Luis Cotelalu.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I cannot put my camera on, but
That's okay.
One thought about it is also the Andrew mentioned the legal framework, and I think one important thing is to also be vigilant on the funds and the money that is used. I am from France and I am working at the EU level, at the European level. And one important thing is to, I think, for governments to really monitor where the EU money goes. And for example, today there is a lot of money that goes to the construction of detention centers. And well, it can be something to be really followed by governments. So that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Louise. And anyone? And we have in the chat also, Charlotte, but believe that government can arrange. Okay. So please feel free to speak. This is the last 4 minutes, and it was great discussion with you all. If you have an intervention, go ahead. Anyone can go ahead. Yeah, Merv, please.
Yeah, I wanted to add a few things. I think we need a paradigm shifting approach because governments are treating migrant or asylum seeker children as sometimes in some cases like criminals or illegal human beings. And on the other hand, academics or human rights courts, including European Court of Human Rights, refer these children as a vulnerable group of people. This is extremely true. I totally agree. What I mean is that approaching immigration youth and children only from a vulnerability perspective is kind of dangerous because these children and youth are also resilient. They're also doers. They are like active subjects and they can lead a change. They can raise their voices. So it is important to shift this paradigm, like seeing these people only as a vulnerable group of people. It's not true. They're resilient. They're like subjects. Thank you. This can also help.
Thank you, Merv. And yes, Manu, you said you can't speak, but yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Merv.
Good evening, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, am I audible?
What?
Yes. One thing we need to do, or one thing we need to do as advocates, activists, is we need to ensure that the governments have to build more facilities for the children, like things to do with mental health, schools to do with activities like psychosocial counseling, and we need counselors who are trained, not just a person who is just coming from a village and then start counseling those people who doesn't even know where to start from. So as as for me, I'm a mental health advocate, and I'm an activist. I'm an activista. So these are the things we do, and I stay in Zambia where there's a LFG camp nearby. We also.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for your opinions in the breakout rooms. I'm going to give everyone 2 seconds while we just wait for a couple people to return. After now, the plan is to go through all of your ideas from your rapporteurs, hear from them as the main discussants of the room for a very brief period of time. And then, because we are slightly running over, we do understand if people do need to leave. That is okay. Please do stay as long as possible. We aim to end in about 20 minutes, and we'll keep this as short as possible. So now we're back. Can I invite, how this session is going to work is the rapporteurs will come back and discuss, and then we'll open it very briefly for a couple of minutes if anyone wants to share final thoughts from all the participants, and then we'll head straight into the closing ceremony. So can I invite the rapporteur of English Room 1, I think that's Venya, if I'm not wrong, to speak.
I think there was another in group 1, but like the reporter from my group is Sim.
Okay, we can start with English Room 3. Sim, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. You can hear me, right? Good. Okay. All right. So I actually don't remember the questions on top of my head, so I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So for question number 1, I think all of us in the room sort of highlighted that some of us did not have the experience of being a victim of immigration detention, but we were interested in child rights. And basically it was just sharing that people shared that they acknowledge the privilege that they have, but then they realized that their privilege was just basic human rights. And also pointed out that children not knowing about why they are being detained in detention centers, and they cannot explain the feeling of being there in detention centers. And this was actually shared by one of our participants who was in a detention center. For question number 2, we pointed out that, which talks about the consequences, we pointed out that the things that happen during our childhood really sticks with us forever, and it has lasting impacts. And also pointed out that in terms of communities, you are actually criminalizing children when you place them in detention centers, and what kind of effect this has on their mental health and their mental well-being. And when they grow up in the future, even if they leave the detention centers, they generally have lack of access to mental health services. And yeah, this worsens the condition at the end of the day. For question number 3, what were the, I think this was about what are the alternative, I can't remember the question, I'm so sorry. But basically, it was proposed that to talk about more alternative detention centers, so more community-based programs essentially. And we all sort of agreed that one way we can convince the government is to, number 1, show the detrimental effects that detention has on children, on their mental well-being, and also showing the alternative, which is community-based care, is also cheaper than having a detention center. And showing this economic model may be a step to convince the government to choose otherwise. And one of our participants also said that changing the public narrative on detention is also very crucial, because when you change public narrative, then the government is pressured to act a certain way according to what the public believes, right? That's how it works, at least in a democracy. And number 4, what can be done to engage more youth and children, and also how can the government engage the youth and children? It is what we all agreed was, it is exactly this: having more roundtables discussion, engaging the youths more on social media. One of us shared that asking the youth and children about their experiences on social media, and by having this discussion, discussions, the government would then maybe come to a realization that these policies that they have on detention is not effective, and thus then this creates more awareness that the government needs to look at better policies when it comes to detention. So that was essentially in a nutshell of all the 4 questions that we discussed. I hope I wasn't going too fast.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sim, for all those ideas. And thank you to Vanya for leading and everyone else who participated in English Roundtable 3. We really appreciate it and your comments. I've just put in the chat, if anyone wants to make additional comments on any of the questions, please do type them in the chat rather than speaking so we can record them and go through things simultaneously. That'd be really great. That way we have your responses and we can add them to that youth report that we were talking about. Can now I invite the speaker for English Roundtable 2 to speak? I think that's Shrivati.
Yes, that's me. So I hope I'm clear and everybody can get me. So we had 3 questions for our team. The first question was, what do you know about child immigration and detention? And do you have lived experiences? So we first went about to define who a child is. And a child we found out to be anyone who is below 18 years. And we do acknowledge that children are very vulnerable. And on issues of lived experiences, we had very many speakers who had on and on, lived experiences of them living in, detention centers. We learned of their experiences and what they go through, and we had. I'll not really mention names because of maybe confidentiality matters, but one of our speakers also spoke about the horrors that happen in detention centers, where you can imagine if an adult goes through such experiences, then what about a child who is actually below 18 years? So we really found that there need to be solutions that come in when it comes to curbing and ending child immigration detention. And some of the things that happen in these centers are just riots which harm children either psychologically and physically. Some of them get beaten up, they got wounded, some of them are actually killed, and it actually affects mostly their psychological state, whereby you find that children who are mostly in detention centers, most of them don't live experiences that are very good, and they're abused in ways that you can't imagine. So we also had speakers talking about defilement actually that happens in these centers, and you can imagine how worse it can get, and especially when it comes to children. We also had speakers also talking about on matters regarding the, we had speakers from the US who are talking about matters regarding immigration in the USA-Mexico border, and what we saw with the government of Joe Biden and Trump. They've been really, for Trump, he was really hard on immigration, but then we see that Joe Biden, he's been a little bit reluctant, but then he hasn't really found diverse solutions, or really solutions that come in to curb ending child immigration detention. And then we move forward to the second question on how governments can be persuaded from child detention. We had issues such as observing the rights of the child when it comes to different charters, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. We also had the creation of legal procedures and laws to protect the children, but also on creation of legal procedures and laws, I brought up the issue of needing politicians to and lawmakers to be accountable and punishable. There's need for leaders to air grievances and issues regarding child detention, and need for politicians and lawmakers to be accountable and punishable for breaking laws to protect children from detention. Because we did realize that there's a lot of reluctancy when it comes to such matters. So there needs to be some push up when it comes to these laws. And then there was education awareness from different stakeholders, implementation of these laws and policies, application and approval of actually immigration documents, because we do know that there are some applications that go on in different centers when it comes to approval of immigration documents. And then we move forward to the last question which we had, which was what can be done by children stroke youth to bring focus onto this issue globally and regionally. So there was points coming up of awareness on matters detention, of child immigration, and issues of sensitizing matters child protection and detention, because we did realize also that there's really not much awareness and sensitization. Because for me, when I talk about my experience, I've really not really known about it for a long time, because there's really not very much sensitization and awareness. Because I got to really know of the situation of how it is on the ground very, very lately, when I was about 18 years old. And organizing and participating in peaceful dialogues, especially with leaders and different stakeholders, on how they can have roundtable dialogues on these matters. And then engaging with youth-led organizations to actively participate in matters ending child immigration and detention. And then we also had points on providing opportunity for youth leaders on roundtables, especially when they discuss matters of children, and they bring in some of the stakeholders, leaders, and amplifying their voices and seeking these platforms with them so that they can have these communications and these matters brought on the table. And then the last point we had issues of people not criminalizing people who are immigrants, because for a very long time there have been discussions of them being not legally in a country, so they are very much criminalized. So that is what we had for this group. Thank you very much, and I hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Venya, for that intervention. Really, really appreciate it. Quickly moving to Srinwati for roundtable 2. Please keep it as brief as possible because we are really running out of time. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Aryan, for that. Yeah, so we really had a very interesting discussion in the English group. So quickly, the first question, I think we heard some really good experiences. We heard from a Pakistani refugee who is living in Thailand for 10 years, and she's also working in detention center as a community volunteer for 6 years. So it was really, really nice to hear her experiences and the kind of trauma that she has experienced in person. And it was really, really heartbreaking. She even shared with us the photo of 2 children who got arrested with their mother on 3rd April. They're just 3 and 5 years old, We also heard insights from how child immigration detention works in India, Morocco, Spain, and Portugal. We also heard insights from human rights lawyer from Turkey, and again, how things work in regard to this topic that we're discussing today. Quickly moving on to question 2 about how child immigration detention impacts the children. So, of course, everybody focused on the negative impacts on child health and well-being and how it scars children forever throughout their life. Even if they are kept in whitewashed, not detention centers, but in community reception centers, hotspots and whatnot, it kind of scars them for life and impacts negatively their cognitive development. We also heard about how when a child is detained, the child is denied of access to education, healthcare, recreation, and whatnot. So basically, the child loses the entire childhood. Definitely, it impacts the psychological thinking. And another important thing, it increases the risks of the child to physical and sexual abuse, acts of violence, social discrimination. Quickly moving on to question 3 in terms of how we can persuade the government. I think the common takeaway from that was using youth power, using our voice, using our narratives, and definitely utilizing the power of social media. So we can not only raise awareness, but also educate our peers, families, communities, and also policymakers, lawmakers, etc., and just indulge in hashtag resistance, digital activism. And it has happened before as well, like hashtag #MeToo, hashtag Black Lives Matter. So we should have something like that for like abolishing child immigration detention as well. And there should be large-scale awareness, and not only awareness among the people who just work in the field. Like every normal person out there who is not into human rights or whatsoever should also be aware about this, because we also came up with the idea that there are many people out there in the public who do not know anything about this. Quickly on question 4, we got really some very interesting recommendations on how children and youth can play a vital role in raising awareness and advocating for change. So they can also share their personal stories on social media and also partner with advocacy groups, engage with international bodies, volunteer, do awareness at university level, spread the word, take collective action, etc. A very interesting thing was about how the governments should take a very partnership approach, and they should also work on changing the paradigm. So they should not only look at the children in like who are being detained or youth migrants who have experienced detention as vulnerable, as people without voice, people without agency. So that narrative needs to flip, you know, they should be acknowledged as someone who has agency, who has resilience. And definitely the government should also provide safe environment, platform and space where youth can freely air out their views and make sure that it's represented well. And also we heard that youth-led initiatives and programs should have enough fundings, which is lacking at the moment. And I think the most important takeaway, I'll wrap up with this, is putting in forefront the lived experiences and narratives of the youth, you know, and that's very important and needs to be considered in migration governance. And most importantly, they should not be criminalized as undocumented illegal migrants without agency or voice. They should have an active role in decision making and help shape states' policies and practices. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Srinwati. And finally, Hassan from the Arabic Roundtable. Hassan, do we have you here?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can talk in Arabic if it's more comfortable for you.
My English is better than my Arabic, so I'll present in Arabic, in English, sorry. I won't repeat much on most of the topics that other team members have presented from the other groups, but I'll briefly go through what we discussed. It was clear that most of the members in our group, in the Arabic group, has wide knowledge and some of them are even personal experiences in detention. There were some stories shared around specific countries in Sudan, in Libya, in Morocco, and Egypt. Even though some of these countries does not have any legal frameworks or legal protections to protect children in detention, there were definitely they were definitely sharing on some NGOs and CSOs and activists who would push for the release of these children. So despite having lack of legal framework, there were groups who were actively engaging with the government on release of people from detention. Of course, we all, on the second question, we all agree that detention can create a horrendous impact on children, especially mental health and emotional well-being. And people in that detention, you know, like it was mentioned earlier, for adults, it is terrible. Imagine for a child. When children are released from detention, they oftentimes lack a support system, which can be pretty harmful for them as they grow up. And so the lack of support system to get them back on their feet and try to rebuild their lives in terms of education, livelihood, and all of the rights that a child has. And these can result to different issues that would be on the society, of course. And of course, children who experience detention would leave with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders, and of course, eventually these would create harm on them psychologically as they develop and as they grow up. On the third question, there were discussion on several things that can be done to convince governments and policymakers and different stakeholders. Mainly is to encourage all of them to come together under one conversation, which is on the release of people from detention, and for them to work together. And of course, we also had to mention that when governments want to implement such policies, they would often look at what the citizens of the country would want. And so raising awareness from the detention, around detention in the eyes of the public would make an impact on how the government would act eventually. On the last question, civil society organizations and groups, that's something that we discuss, which should be encouraged for all of them to work together, continue different engagements. And of course, one of the very important point that we also mentioned is to include people with lived experience. So children and youth who have experienced detention in all levels of advocacy and engagement, not just tokenizing them for the sake of having them just to attend, but also listening to them directly and hearing what they have to say about their experiences and what key recommendations they have on resolving this issue and implementing different strategies. So of course, for the government to listen more to youth and children with lived experience, but also not just the governments, but also we spoke about how NGOs and human rights group can also leave this part behind. And this often happens not just by the government, but again by NGOs. So we would need to encourage these, to uphold these. And finally, one last recommendation we had is for governments to sign any existing agreements, conventions, or protocols around detention centers so that the issue can be taken more seriously, and they can be held accountable for any action that goes against any of these rights that they would be abused in these regions. So that's pretty much most of the discussion, apart from what everyone has already presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. We really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, and all the rapporteurs for their contributions today. Melanie and Carolina, are we there? Perfect.
Yes, go ahead, Ariane.
Oh, thanks, Melanie. So everyone, I would like to now bring us to the close of today's conversation. We really value your inputs, and I'll let the final remarks go to Melanie and Carolina from IDC and UNICEF.
Thank you. I'm not going to say very much. So much has been said today about the different types of work that we need people like you to be engaged in order to make the difference, in order to really see a change. We heard about people who are involved in volunteering, different types of volunteering efforts at local level. We heard about people involved in the need for information, the need for use of social media and changing public opinion, the need for engagement of different types of groups in advocating with policymakers. And we have that opportunity on the 24th of May as well, when governments are going to come together to look at, I know the NYCP is going to pull together key points from this consultation today to be put to the governments and to find people to speak who will be able to be the most convincing with governments. So I thank you all for your engagement, and hope that today has inspired people to really engage more in the cause in whichever way that you're able to contribute. Thank you very much. Carolina, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add.
Thanks, Melanie. I want to say that I have been quite motivated and inspired by this meeting and what I heard in my workout group. The thing that stayed with me the strongest was a quote from a lived experience leader who was in detention as a child that said that life in detention as a child is horror and is not a place for anyone, let alone for children. And this is, of course, a very strong statement, and I think it summarizes all. But I also like the way we are finishing this in terms of really emphasizing the agency and resilience of young people who have been affected by this and who are at risk from immigration detention, and whose voices should really be at the forefront or the center of this on this agenda. For us as colleagues, it's very pleasing to see this happening. And like Melanie saying, there are more opportunities to influence this agenda directly. I think it was also talk about storytelling, the importance of the use of social media and digital activism, opportunities for youth leadership, creation of platforms, pursuing ATD as a viable solution, multi-level approaches, etc. So I think we all have a lot of homework here. And it's very good to see this in terms of movement building and pushing this agenda forward. So I don't want to take more time, just to thank everyone, and especially to thank NYCP, Ariane, and everyone organizing this. It has been just such a privilege and such an inspiration to share this time together. And we look forward to continue working jointly towards ending child immigration detention.
Thank you so much, Melanie, Carolina, and all of the support from the tech people, UNNM, UNHCR, and everyone who spoke, and Hayat, of course, for your experiences and everything. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you to each and every one of you who are here on this call for participating in this incredible conversation. It's been, as Carolina correctly said, it's so inspiring to hear all of your stories. It's a sensitive issue, and we really, really respect that people have come forward with their opinions and also their experiences if they are a child immigrant who has been in detention. As Melanie and Carolina have highlighted, there are ways that you can influence this agenda, and that is at May 24th, directly at the Intergovernmental Peer Learning Exchange on ending child immigration detention. As Sam mentioned earlier in the opening, there are three possibilities where you can speak: the opening, the panel on local level action, and the third panel on moving forward and the next steps. So, and your responsibilities at that meeting will be to highlight the key findings from the youth consultation, which we've held today, and the global youth report that NYCP are collating on ending child immigration detention. And if you would like to sign up to speak at the May 24th event, please use the link in the chat that I've just sent. The registration form is now open, and you can go register. And obviously there are only 3 slots, so only 3 people will be selected. But thank you so much for applying in advance, and thank you so much for being here today. We have really, really appreciated all of your views. Thank you to our lovely facilitators as well, who are volunteering their time to come and join us as well. And finally, keep activating, keep advocating for the issues that you care about, keep the issue on your mind, and don't stop fighting to end child immigration detention, and support NYCP and all the others on their journey. And if you are a person with lived experience, please do make sure you keep telling your stories to educate others about what it means to be a child immigrant in detention, as it's really important we put you front and center at important events and have your stories heard. And thank you for volunteering on Monday. And with that, I now close the first ever global youth consultation on ending child immigration detention, and wish you a lovely rest of the week and a lovely future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am Nuruddin Sani Abdullahi from Kano State, Nigeria. Thank you very much. So we are ready to work with any individuals and the individual organization. We are ready to introduce the project or activities of any interested organization in Northern Nigeria or Nigeria at a whole. My email is winterlion1010@gmail.com. Please, you can reach me. Yes, we are ready to work with you. Thank you very much. Nuruddin Sani from Nigeria. My email is winterlion1010@gmail.com. Please.